Now, last week, our children came under heavy fire for a Father's Day ad that was seen not to represent South African society. People took to social media to share their grievances. A junior was blamed for the error, but as ads move online and as communication is largely online, how should these issues be dealt with? And does such oversight speak to the lack of diversity in South Africa's advertising space? Now, to further this discussion with us is BBDO Executive Creative Director Brad Riley. Hello, Brad.
How are you?
I'm all right. Now, Brad, blaming such oversight on a junior, is that the right response?
I think that's inexcusable. You have to take responsibility as a company for anything that you put out there. It's not good enough to say, whatever, the dog ate my homework, you know. You've got to stand up and take accountability.
And we are seeing a lot of ads moving online now. Does that mean that the rules change from what people were used to when ads were in a print format, when they were on billboards and when they were on television?
I don't think it changes. I think as an industry, our job is to create communication that resonates with people. I think what has changed is the immediate response that you can get from the online space and the social media space, etc. I mean, I think before social media, if you put something out there that offended people or that people liked, they would speak about it round the braai. You know, now, like, there's a braai, but it's got millions of people at it, and there's microphones at it, and it's being broadcast across the country and across the world.
Everyone has a view and different views about every issue. Should every little view be taken seriously on social media?
I think you've got to have a filter, but you've also got to be aware of what the conversation is that's going on. And if it starts to gain some kind of critical mass, you've got to take that stuff seriously. You know, I mean, it can be a good place. Social media can also be can go very wrong for you.
And what this conversation also led to is a conversation about diversity as well, because in fact that's what the criticism was about. The ad, as well as the Mother's Day ad that Outsurance put out, were not diverse enough. They are not a true representation of South African demographics. 19 white people, 1 black person, is seen as good fathers. And some people are even suggesting that it's showing that there's a lack of diversity in the ad industry.
Well, it's very high on the agenda of all industry bodies. Obviously, there's the legislative imperative, but I think beyond that, it's something that's very important to all the bodies. It has been slow, but there's steps being taken to try and transform that in various angles in the industry.
You did speak briefly about the quick reaction that one can get on social media, whether good or bad. But what about the shelf life that advertisements have online as well? Does that have an impact on how the industry should react? Because if it's on television, there's a complaint, you can pull it off TV and it's gone forever. If it's online, not quite.
Well, I think the nature of it being online is it can be shared, so that conversation can get bigger and more people can join that conversation. I do think, though, the reality of the world we live in, the digital world, there's so much content out there and so much stuff happening all the time that, sure, it may exist still online, but that conversation moves on fairly quickly. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. You know, it can be a good thing, but it's often a bad thing that these things get forgotten about. I mean, stuff as big as war kind of gets forgotten about in 3 weeks' time.
And it's not necessarily a good thing a lot of the time. But it's not the first time that an organization in South Africa has come under fire for its advertising, especially with social media conversations. What do you think the ad industry in South Africa is getting wrong?
Getting wrong? Well, I think they get it wrong occasionally, they get it right occasionally. I think there's, and using this specific example as a reference, I think it's advertising 101 that you should be representative of the people that you're talking to. So I think when you get that wrong, that's a very basic thing. I think then to take that onto a deeper level, it's about not just being representative, but then being relevant. You know, and trying to create relevance for a market that you are talking to.
And the conversations that are happening about the different parts of South Africa happening on ads that that go up online, for example, because we touched briefly on the criticism of diversity, but there was also criticism on the representation of different segments of society. One segment, some people were saying, as they were criticizing, is seen as largely one thing, and which is often negative, and one segment of society is seen as largely one thing, which is largely positive. And do you think that the ad industry is aware of the changing nature of South African society as well, and people as they climb up the economic ladder as well?
Well, I think it goes back to your question around transformation, and I think diversity is important from an advertising industry point of view in terms of the agencies. That dictates the kind of work that you start getting out, and that applies to multiple things. That applies to race, it applies to gender, applies to religion, and I think as that diversification happens, you start to see different kind of work coming out. That's more culturally sensitive or culturally appropriate. So I think that's kind of the challenge and something that is on the agenda.
Brad, if you were to advise anyone who works for an advertising agency about how they should react on criticism they get online, what would you say to them?
React quickly, and react properly and consciously. I think it goes back to the same approach to what work you put out there. Share that work first amongst people, amongst a diverse group of people, to get a view. In terms of how you respond, check that response before you respond, but you can't bury your head in the sand. You've got to take it on and stand up to it. And I mean, Outsurance have come out kind of to apologise.
Eventually.
Yeah. I don't think they're blaming it on the junior as the right thing, but I think they've now kind of trying to take accountability for it.
All right. Brad Riley from BBDO, thank you very much for being a part of our network.
Thank you for having me.
All right, sure. Now, we caught up with actor and presenter Mxolisi Masango, and he told us what his favorite piece of technology is.
And now, Mzuzwana, I'm in the study of the head of the Russian mob, trying to hack in his computer, in my damn underwear.
Namhla, Kokomoya, singayenza lento ukheka ama-computer kulula kabi.
How's it, guys? My name is Mxolisi Masango, actor as well as television presenter for Air Expressions on SABC1. My favorite gadget is the Samsung S7 Edge VR goggles. Those are really amazing. First of all, it enhances the gaming experience. I like playing Pac-Man on it. I like playing virtual birds on it because you can literally feel the texture of those birds as they fly past. Yeah, not advisable when you're driving.